The streets of the American city breathe with an energy that never really sleeps, and those who wear the badge live inside that pulse. The officers begin their nights like countless others. Before them, sirens-ready body cameras, rolling, waiting for the first call that will jolt them into action. For some, law enforcement is not just a job, but an addiction to unpredictability, to the rush that comes with chasing chaos and trying to restore order. They talk about the camaraderie in their units, about the trust that builds when you're chasing a suspect at 120 miles an hour and you know your partner is right behind you. Every night begins with routine checking radios, scanning traffic, but every routine can collapse in seconds into pursuit, fear, and adrenaline. On one night, a stolen Dodge races through Independence, Missouri. Officer McCain's cruiser howls as it speeds through intersections lights flashing across the quiet suburban roads. The radio fills with clipped code and urgency speeds, over 100, then 120, then tires blowing out as the vehicle loses control. When the chase ends, it's not with bullets or screams, but the dull crunch of metal against a transformer. Sparks fly, power flickers across nearby businesses. The driver is pulled from the wreck, breathing hard, a man half defiant, half relieved. His excuses tumble out fast. He says he was only heading to his girlfriend's place, that his tires were bald, that the red light came too quick, that he didn't mean to run. His tone wavers between arrogance and shame. The officers, used to this rhythm of denial, talk to him like old acquaintances. They've chased him before, maybe twice in as many weeks. They laugh quietly, knowing that despite the danger, this is part of why they joined, to feel alive in a moment that tests every reflex they have. The stolen truck lies mangled. Inside the ignition is punched a screwdriver, left behind evidence of a quick theft by someone too desperate or too careless to cover his tracks. Even in arrest, the officers balance sternness with humanity. They joke check on each other, remind themselves that nobody got hurt. A good chase without blood, they call it. Another night ends, paperwork replaces adrenaline, and the city exhales. But the city never rests long. Across town, another call comes in, a woman with a handgun at a parking lot security, holding her at gunpoint beside a car that turns out to be stolen. The woman's name is Donna Trembling, confused her speech, scattered with half-truths and fragments of delusion. She tells officers that a man named Buddy lent her the car, that her boyfriend Elvis hit her, that she didn't realize she'd hit another vehicle. Her words slip between panic and exhaustion, her face marked by the chaos of addiction and mental illness. The officers listen, patient but wary, knowing that compassion doesn't erase the danger. They find a BB gun on the floorboard, an air duster can in her lap, the kind used to get high. A security guard explains how she kept saying she wanted to die. For a moment, the job shifts from pursuit to prevention, from law to empathy. The officers talk to her gently, trying to piece together her world of online friends, broken phones, and grief over a dead brother. She insists she didn't steal the car, that she was just in the wrong seat at the wrong time. But the report says otherwise. She is the named suspect. They arrest her gently, almost apologetically. For them, it's a small crime, but for her, it might be the last thread holding together a life unraveling. The deputy who escorts her later says something that reveals the strange wisdom of years on patrol, that today's suspect can be tomorrow's victim. In the city's cycle of poverty, drugs, and trauma, the faces blur. The same person running from you this week may call you for help the next. The badge doesn't just chase crime, it bears witness to the slow erosion of lives. Later that night, another chase begins, this time with a stolen vehicle cutting through a dark California street. The air unit circles overhead, spotlights slicing through alleys. Officers move in coordination like a single nervous system radio command, snapping between cars, eyes scanning fences, flashlights catching movement. Two suspects run vaulting over barriers until they are cornered in a dirt field. They are young, scared one barely 18. When the officers close in, they find the vehicle still idling ignition, tampered a BB gun on the ground that looks far too real. The arrested teen is quiet, nodding when told he'll be taken to juvenile hall for possession of a stolen vehicle. His mother, when she arrives, thanks the officers. Her car is dented but intact. She looks relieved, not because justice is done, but because the story didn't end worse. The officers smile, tired, already thinking of the next call. For them, it's routine. For her, it's everything. Another night, another city, another chase. In San Bernardino, a U-Haul truck roars down the highway, flagged by a license plate reader as stolen. Officers coordinate spike strips across intersections, racing against the suspect's erratic turns. The chase becomes a ballet of danger radio updates, headlights weaving through traffic, tires shredding on asphalt. When the spikes finally bite the truck, slows hissing, rolling to a stop. The man steps out, hands raised. He is weary, shirtless, his excuses rehearsed. He claims he found the truck on the side of the road. In the cab, officers find meth tools, a headlamp, and a knife. The suspect mutters that he didn't see the lights, that the tires must have just run out of air. The officers don't argue. They've heard every variation of denial the streets can offer. He's arrested for possession of a stolen vehicle, evading police and narcotics. As the paperwork begins, another pursuit interrupts the night. A sedan flying down baseline, 3 suspects fleeing on foot after tossing a gun and bags of meth out the window. Witnesses point to where the weapon landed shattered on the curb. The meth is stacked in heavy bags, 5 pounds, maybe more. The young man in custody, barely 18, insists it's not his, that the cameras will prove his innocence. His voice cracks between defiance and fear. The officer, calm and weary, explains the charges: possession for sale, illegal firearm, evading arrest. The youth swears on the Bible it wasn't him. The officer has heard it all before, but still he listens. Even guilt in his line of work carries the sound of a confession that wants to be believed. Later, the meth is sealed in evidence bags, the gun photographed, the paperwork filed. One more case for the system. Yet the officers know they've cut something poisonous out of the city's bloodstream. The SWAT sergeant who helped with the bust reflects on his job. It's fast-paced, high-risk, and never predictable. They break down doors, chase armed suspects, seize drugs by the pound. On their off days, they go to the gym, take their families to dinner, try to live like ordinary people. But every time the radio chirps, they return to that edge between control and chaos. In another corner of the same county, a new pursuit unfolds. A suspect named Dion speeds down 9th Street, claiming he's being chased by someone else. When he's stopped at gunpoint, his story doesn't add up. He says he borrowed his brother's car, that he was running from a mysterious van. Officers find a loaded ghost gun and a bag of cocaine in his backpack. Dion denies everything. He's been to prison before, he admits, but never for guns or drugs. The sergeant who interviews him gives him a chance to be honest, but the record doesn't lie. Prior charges for narcotics and weapons. The sergeant explains that lying only makes things worse, that the SMASH team deals with truth and evidence, not excuses. Dion slumps, realizing the game is over. He'll face charges for felon in possession of a firearm and cocaine for sale. The night closes the same way it always does, with the hum of engines cooling, the flicker of red and blue fading into the dark. Officers lean against their patrol cars, swapping weary jokes, half smiles, masking fatigue. For every chase and arrest, there's an echo of humanity, an addict gasping for air, a thief who just wanted attention, a cop who still believes in second chances even after years of seeing the worst. The rhythm of cops is the rhythm of America's underbelly, raw, chaotic, strangely intimate. It captures the fragile line between order and collapse, between justice and mercy. Every hands up and get on the ground is both command and prayer, a ritual played out night after night in cities that never stop needing saving. The officers don't talk about heroism. They talk about paperwork, about partners who've got their backs, about making it home. Yet beneath their calm professionalism lies the truth that defines their world. The chase never ends, only pauses. Every arrest is temporary, every victory fleeting. Somewhere, even as dawn rises, another engine roars to life, another suspect runs. Another officer reaches for the radio, saying, "We're in pursuit." As the hours crawl toward dawn, the city's breath changes. The chaos that ruled the midnight hours begins to dissolve, leaving behind a fragile calm. The police radio's quiet, but every officer knows that silence never lasts. The city has its own pulse, and law enforcement moves to it, sometimes leading, sometimes reacting, always chasing. The officers gather back at their precincts, their uniforms still carrying the scent of sweat, asphalt, and gasoline. In the locker room, they trade stories about the stolen trucks, the BB guns that looked too real, the suspects who swore they were innocent. Laughter breaks through fatigue, but it's the kind that hides exhaustion rather than joy. One officer rubs the back of his neck and says he still hears the sound of tires, skidding of sirens bouncing off concrete walls. It's the kind of noise that never really leaves your head, even when you're home trying to sleep. Some of them replay the night's events in their minds. The chase through intersections, the trembling voice of a woman saying she wanted to die, the flicker of a stolen car's taillights disappearing down a dark street. They wonder what drives people to this point: addiction, desperation, or just a moment of terrible impulse. Each suspect becomes a story, a fragment of something bigger. And each story adds another layer to the officer's understanding of humanity, messy, unpredictable, and often heartbreaking. There is a rhythm to policing that few outsiders understand. It's not just about adrenaline. It's about patience, the waiting before a chase, the calm voice before a confrontation, the restraint when anger or fear could easily take over. The veteran officers teach the younger ones how to read people, how a twitch of the hand might mean danger, how silence can be louder than words, how guilt hides in the smallest gestures. They say the job is 10% action and 90% conversation. It's the talking that saves lives, talking to calm a suspect, to convince someone not to run, to make a desperate woman put down a weapon. The younger cops, still burning with excitement, sometimes forget this. They crave the chase, the flash of lights, the rush of control. But the older ones know that the real work happens afterward, in the quiet, in the paperwork, in the reflection that follows. The deputy from Independence who chased the red Dodge thinks about the man he arrested. He remembers how the suspect laughed nervously, claiming he was only 5 miles over the limit. He remembers the small moment of absurdity when the man tried to argue that 120 miles per hour was just a little speeding. Those moments, oddly enough, humanize the chaos. The deputy shakes his head but can't help smiling. That strange, fragile humor is what keeps them sane. Across the country, the same kind of night plays out in different accents and temperatures. In California, the San Bernardino officers still feel the residue of their pursuit. The smell of burning rubber, the heat from the spike, strips the weight of the meth bags they pulled from the car. They talk about how close it could have gone the other way. One false move, one trigger, pull one misread signal, and someone could have died. But they didn't. And in their world, that counts as success. Back at the precinct, the SWAT sergeant finishes his report. His words are: professional, detached suspect, complied evidence, sees no injuries. But inside, he's still wired, the adrenaline refusing to fade. He joined SWAT for the challenge, the discipline, the idea that he could make a difference where it mattered most. Yet every arrest reminds him of how thin that line is between justice and survival. He's seen both heroes and criminals crumble in the same way, under pressure, in fear, in regret. The young man who swore he didn't throw the drugs out the window sits in a holding cell, now staring at the cold wall. The officer who arrested him knows that the story isn't over. It never is. The system will process him, assign him a case number, maybe a public defender. But the officer remembers the fear in his eyes, the way he kept repeating that he wanted to prove his innocence, the way he swore on the Bible. The job requires detachment, but moments like that make it impossible to stay entirely cold. Every suspect reminds them of someone they once knew, a neighbor, a friend's kid, someone who took the wrong turn and couldn't find their way back. Later that morning, another shift begins. The officers trade greetings in the parking lot, their faces lit by the rising sun. Some are finishing 12-hour shifts. Others are just beginning theirs. The city looks peaceful now, but they know better. They know that peace in this job is just the space between storms. The rookies clean their cruisers, check their radios, tighten their belts. The veterans sip coffee from paper cups, half listening to dispatch chatter. Somewhere, a call will come, a domestic disturbance, a suspicious vehicle, a theft in progress. And once again, they'll roll out, not knowing how it will end. They talk sometimes quietly about why they still do it. Some say it's duty, some say it's the thrill, but most just shrug. The truth is more complicated. For every moment of satisfaction, the arrest, the confession, the successful stop, there are 10 moments of uncertainty, of moral weight, of wondering whether they did the right thing. They are witnesses to human failure over and over again, yet they keep trying to fix what cannot be fixed completely. The show Cops captures only fragments of their world-edited bursts of tension moments that fit inside a camera frame. But the real story is longer, quieter, heavier. Behind every hands up is a heart pounding with fear. Behind every calm voice over the radio is a human being calculating risk, consequence, and compassion in the same breath. When they pull someone from a crashed car, when they knock on a door at midnight, they are stepping into someone's private collapse. And when the cameras stop rolling, they still carry those faces home. The Independence officer goes home after his shift, his body sore, his uniform smelling of gasoline. He kisses his sleeping daughter on the forehead, then sits in silence for a few minutes before showering. He doesn't tell her what he saw or how close he came to danger. She's too young to understand that her father spends his nights chasing people who could easily kill him. To her, he's just daddy who catches bad guys. He wants to keep it that simple. He watches the news, sometimes hearing people debate police reform, brutality, corruption. He doesn't deny the system's flaws, he's seen them. But he also knows the truth that rarely makes it to TV, that most of his colleagues just want to make it home alive. In another state, the San Bernardino sergeant sits in his truck, scrolling through his phone before heading home. His hands still tremble slightly. He thinks about the gun they found, the ghost gun with no serial number. He thinks about how many more like it are out there. In his city, violence feels like a wildfire that never dies out, only changes direction. He remembers the woman who once told him after her son's overdose, "I just want the city to stop eating my children." That line stuck with him. It's why he stays, why he keeps putting on the uniform even when it feels futile. The police officers across these cities share an unspoken understanding that every arrest is just a temporary pause in a longer tragedy. The meth dealer, the car thief, the desperate woman with the BB gun, all of them are caught in cycles that the law alone can't break. The officers can stop a chase, but they can't stop the reasons behind it. They can't arrest a suspect, but they can't arrest poverty, addiction, or despair. Still, they keep trying, because trying is the only thing they know how to do. When the sun finally rises high enough to burn away the night's chill, the city resets. Traffic thickens, kids go to school, people open shops. The same streets that echoed with sirens hours earlier now hum with ordinary life. The officers fade into the background, their patrol cars blending with delivery trucks and commuters. Somewhere, a citizen waves at them, maybe grateful, maybe indifferent. They nod back knowing that tomorrow night everything will start again. In the end, the story of these 2 nights, 2 episodes among thousands, isn't really about crime or punishment. It's about endurance. It's about the fragile hope that even in a world where people lie, run, steal, and break, there are still those who show up over and over again to face it. The badge doesn't grant perfection, it demands persistence. And persistence in a city that never stops testing you is its own kind of courage. So the cycle continues, the pursuit, the arrest, the paperwork, the reflection, the laughter that hides the weariness. The officers return to the streets not because they expect gratitude, but because they know that as long as the city breathes, someone has to keep watch. The sirens will wail again, the tires will screech. The commands, "Hands up, get on the ground," will echo into the night. And once again, the men and women behind those voices will stand in the thin space between chaos and calm, between fear and duty, between the worst of humanity and the faint, stubborn hope that still makes it worth fighting for.